Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. Today's video is going to be a collective fabric haul, and I'm also going to take you through some of my plans for 2018. Because of this, the format might seem a little bit different than my other fabric hauls, and that is completely intentional. I can't film this like I normally would because I simply have too much to share. Since I've been posting so little and fabric hauls are never my best received videos, I ended up skipping the one I would usually post in April, and I also didn't make one in September when I got back from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where I picked up a bunch of cool fabrics. So there's a lot of fabrics that I'm excited about, that I think you guys would be excited about, that I haven't shared with you, and I wanted to include them in this video instead of skipping over them just because I haven't purchased them recently. So I decided to make it a massive collective haul, and I'm organizing everything into projects. So there are some materials that I purchased over the past year that I'm not including in this, just because I don't have the project it will go with specifically planned out. This also means that people who aren't huge fans of hauls might enjoy this, since it is going to be focused quite heavily on things I plan on making in 2018 instead of me just showing you stuff, though I will also obviously be showing you stuff. Just before sharing the materials, I want to get 3 things out of the way, and the first is that this is a collective haul. This was not all purchased in a single day. This is about 6 months worth of material for me, and at least 6 months worth of projects. So if this seems really excessive for a single video, you're right, it is. This would usually be broken up into 3 or 4 videos. I've just combined it all for your viewing pleasure. The second thing I want to say is that the projects I'm going to be talking about today are very focused on the turn of the century as well as the 18th century. I'm not sure why, but those are the periods that I'm feeling really excited and passionate about right now. So I've been able to develop the most specific plans for those projects, and because of that I have the most materials for each one, and that's why I've decided to talk about them. These are by no means my only plans for 2018. I actually plan on branching out a lot in the new year, and I'm really excited about it. Some of the projects that I'm not going to show you materials for in this video include a 1950s coat. I also want to make an 1860s silk dress with a bunch of velvet ribbon work on it. I'm still planning on making my giant pink 18th century court gown. I also have most of the materials to make a menswear inspired suit to go with that, which would be really cool. I have the base fabrics for 2 Elizabethan dresses, and I also have a couple materials which I want to turn into a bustle dress. I still have fabrics for a Victorian evening gown, and I'd like to make that a reality. And on a recent trip to Fabric Mart, I picked up the most beautiful silk shantung, which I want to use for a 17th century dress. And I also got a really bright yellow gingham silk taffeta, which would be perfect for something 1830s. So I am planning on branching out. These are just the ideas that are most developed in my mind, which is why these are the ones that I'm sharing with you today. The third thing is a project announcement, but it's a little bit different than all of the other projects I'm going to be talking about in this video, since it's on a much larger scale. My plan is to commit myself a lot more to social media for the first half of 2018 and see if I can make it profitable. And that means there's going to be a lot more videos, and I'm probably going to be launching a Patreon, which will have patterns and behind the scenes footage. And the project I've decided to launch this with is actually a series of more than 15 projects, because my plan is to sew my way through the decades of the 20th century. I've purchased over 15 original patterns from 1900 all the way to the early 2000s, and I'm going to be following 1 or 2 of them every month and sharing the process of making all of them with all of you. I'm not quite sure what to call it yet. I'm not sure if it's going to be sewing through the decades or the pattern project, but I'm really excited about it, and I can't wait to get started and to share it with all of you. I feel like I'm going to learn a lot and really gain a new appreciation for 20th century fashion, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to make a proper announcement for that sometime in January, but since I'm talking about projects for 2018, it felt wrong not to mention that, since that is going to be such a big part of the first half of that year. It's also something that I've invested a lot of my personal money into, so I really hope it ends up working out. And with that out of the way, I'm going to get onto the fabric. So I have 2 18th century projects I want to talk about in this video. I don't know what it is about the 18th century. I always said it wasn't my favorite period, but it keeps drawing me back in. I think since I've had so many unsuccessful 18th century projects, I keep returning to it with hopes of improving. And maybe this will be the one that comes out perfect. You never know. So the first project I want to talk about is going to be an 18th century sack-back gown. This is going to be based on a couple extant examples, as well as a painting called The Swing. When I asked for project suggestions, a lot of people recommended this painting to me and said that I should make something based off of it. And I agree with you guys. It's a beautiful, whimsical painting, and it shows a side of the 18th century that you don't usually see. And I think making something inspired by it is a fantastic idea. I'm also hoping this can be an introduction to different 18th century silhouettes to me. Even though I've made quite a few 18th century projects, they've all been relatively streamlined and had similar sort of patterning to them. So I think this will be a really fun challenge and probably a very frustrating challenge at times. So the main fabric I purchased for it is a beautiful pale pink shantung. It's 100% silk and it has stripes running through it. I love the texture of this fabric and the color. This is exactly what I was hoping to find. It was a little bit more expensive than I wanted at $9 a yard, but I think it's going to be worth it. I just really hope that I have enough of it to pull this off. Since I was so concerned that I wouldn't have enough, I ended up buying 2 yards of this dupioni, which I found at Diana's Fabrics, and it matches perfectly. So my plan is to use this for a lot of the ruffles and frills, and then this can be used in more of the structural elements of the garment. So hopefully between those two I will have enough to pull this off. Most of the trims for this project are going to be made through fabric manipulation, which to a lot of people means that you could save money, but to me that meant I could spend a lot of money on feathers to go with it. I purchased 2 beautiful ostrich feathers, which are going to go either on the hat or be part of the hair piece. I'm really trying to expand my ostrich feather collection, especially since I'm getting more into doing historical hair now. I like the idea of being able to incorporate these into styles as well as hats. I also picked up 2 pink pheasant feathers. I thought these would be a really fun addition to the hat as well. They're slightly darker tone. And then the most ridiculous purchase was this. These are ivory and pink striped feathers, and I did not need these, but I managed to justify them because I'm that talented. I thought these fit the whimsical nature of the painting so well, and they actually match the material that I have for the 18th century court dress as well, so hopefully I can use some of them on that, and it will have multiple purposes, which means it was totally a practical investment. And to go with the fabric, I purchased a yard of Long Con lace. This isn't particularly accurate for the 18th century, but it was reduced down to $12 a yard since the store was closing, and it matched so nicely, and I thought the appliques would look beautiful on the bodice, so I convinced myself to get a yard of it. It's got PG pearls sewn to the centers of the flowers, and it's just beautiful. So I really love this combination, and I love my inspiration, and I love my idea for it, and I'm really looking forward to getting working on that. I guess I will get the other 18th century project out of the way as well, and for this one I also have a pair of shoes to go with it, which I'm going to share in this video, but I guess I'll show you the fabrics first. So this project is going to be made out of a cotton, and this is a Moda historical print quilting cotton, and I love it. I picked this up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and though I saw a lot of these historical quilting cotton prints while I was there, this one was the one that really stuck out to me. I don't think I've ever seen purple and orange and green and pink incorporated into material before, especially in such an elegant, interesting way. And as soon as I saw this, I knew I wanted to make an 18th century dress out of it. So I purchased 8 yards of it, which I'm really hoping will be enough. And then in another quilting store in the area, I was lucky enough to come across this wool. And this is such a beautiful felt weight wool. So I thought I could make a relatively simple 18th century dress out of this, and then make a jacket to go over top of it out of this. So this is a project that I'd really like to make this year in the last couple of weeks of December, but we'll see if that ends up happening. But I'm definitely going to vlog this project because I feel like it's going to be a remake of an 18th century piece that I finished early in the year and wasn't very happy with. So I'd like to compare the things I do differently on this one. And I actually bought shoes to go with this. You might remember that in October I purchased a black pair of American Duchess Fraser 18th century shoes to wear with a Halloween project. And those are black, which means they go with a lot of things, but they don't go with everything. And I didn't feel like they went with this project. They also only accurately represent the first half of the 18th century, so I wanted to get another pair that would go with some other things and be more suited to the later decades. So I decided to pick up the Kensingtons in the color Oxford, which is a deep red, and I love how these look with these materials. And I've tested them with some other fabrics I plan on using for 18th century things, and it looks beautiful with all of them. It's a much darker red than I was expecting based off of the photos, but it is gorgeous. I will probably do a more thorough review of these on my blog. I also plan on showing the buckle installation process in a vlog, since I got a lot of questions about that and there isn't a video currently out there about it. And speaking of buckles, these are so pretty! I will show close-ups, but I got the oval rhinestone ones, which have a little bow on the top and bottom, and they're gorgeous. So that was definitely an expensive purchase, and I actually bought another pair of shoes during the sale as well, but they were something I was prepared to buy in 2018, and I figured I might as well get them while they come with free buckles, which means they are effectively 25% off. So I know I said a lot of the projects I'm going to talk about in this video are kind of repetitive, This one is not. As you can see here, I have quite a bit of pink velvet, and I purchased 5 yards of this with the intention of using it to recover a couch. I have no experience when it comes to upholstery. I do not really have room in my bedroom for a couch, but that did not stop me from purchasing 2 Victorian couches at an auction house. And they desperately need to be recovered, and I am totally up for the task. I think it's going to be a fun challenge, and I really hope I don't destroy them because they're beautiful. I also plan on making a video about it because I think it's going to be really entertaining watching me struggle with a staple gun and how to repair and sand down scratches in 19th century wood. So if you're looking forward to that, stay tuned. So I purchased 5 yards of this from a store that was going out of business. It was reduced down to $7 a yard, and it's a really nice upholstery weight. It isn't too thick, but it isn't really flimsy like the fabric it was originally recovered with. And to go with this, I purchased some gimp. I had absolutely no idea how much of this I was going to need. I was originally going to purchase 15 yards at $1.50 a yard, but they told me that a bolt of 35 yards was $30, so I decided to spend a little extra and get that instead, and now I know I will have plenty left over. And these match really, really nicely. I probably could have gotten this cheaper online, but I wanted to make sure it matched, so I was prepared to spend a little bit more in store. So the next 2 projects I want to talk about are Victorian in nature. I was really into the 1890s last year, but I became somewhat disenchanted with it after my attempts at that period failed. However, I still think it is filled with wonderful, ridiculous things, and I would like to make more pieces from it. And those feelings became a lot more intense after I saw this fashion plate on Pinterest. I saw it and fell in love. There is nothing about this that I don't love. Unfortunately, I think the materials used in that would be almost impossible to find in stores, so I didn't try and stick too closely to the color scheme. I sort of just went with what I felt was right. So for the base fabric, I picked up 6 yards of wool gabardine. This is not showing up nicely on camera. It's sort of a pale grayish pink in person, and I really like the weight of this fabric. I feel like it's going to drape nicely, but it's not going to be too heavy over the skirts in the way that a lot of suitings are, but it's also not so light that it will show every single lump and bump in the petticoat. So I have high hopes for this. Then for the blouse, I purchased a striped shirting, and I love this fabric. I actually wish I'd gotten more of it. It was $5 a yard, and I picked up 3 yards. It has an ivory base with pale green and orange stripes, and then little textured stripes of ivory woven through it as well. I just think it's really pretty and delicate and adds a nice little bit of texture without being too obnoxious. For the hat, I bought a yard of brown velvet because I didn't have any around. Now the fabric I'm not so sure about for this ensemble is the striped material I picked up for the front. I really like it, but I feel like it's a little bit too Crayola box of colors. I wanted something that was a little bit more spaced out, but there weren't a lot of options there in the weight of material that I wanted. So I picked up 3 yards of this silk dupioni, and though I really like it and I think it has the potential to look really cool and fun and out there, I don't know. I'm not 100% on it. So I'm not sure if I'm going to go for it or hunt around on Etsy and see if I can find something I like a little bit better. But I did use this as kind of a base for the other fabrics I purchased, which include a yard of chartreuse China silk, which I plan on using for the sash around the waist as well as the hat. Then also to go with that, I picked up some jacquard ribbon, which has little flecks of orange and purple in it, which actually complement the purple in this and the orange in the shirting really nicely. And this is going to go around the waist. And then sticking to the chartreuse, there's a little piece of black ostrich feather in it, and I thought it was a spider that was jumping on me. I also purchased some matching feathers. I believe this bunch was $6, which isn't too bad, and I thought this would look really fun on a Victorian style flower pot hat, especially with the dark brown base. And the final thing I purchased for this is a really delicate Venetian lace. I found this at Daytona Trim, and I don't usually buy a lot there because it can be quite expensive, but really high quality Venetian lace can be difficult to find on Etsy, and this was the exact thing I was looking for. It was $5 a yard, which was more than I wanted to pay, but they told me if I purchased 15 yards then it would be half price. So I ended up buying the 15 yards, which was more than I wanted to pay, but I think this is going to be a really beautiful addition to the project. And since I'm going to be focusing so much on the decade/pattern project in the beginning of the new year, I'm okay with spending a little bit more on materials for projects I know are going to take me a long time and that I'm going to get a lot of enjoyment out of creating. So those are the materials for that one. Please let me know what you think of it, because I know they're really strange, but I feel like the 1890s were really strange and it could almost work. But I sort of need a shove in that direction because I'm not 100% confident. Speaking of weird 1890s combinations, I really want to make a quick 1890s two-piece costume before the year is over, and I think I have 2 fabrics that are perfect for it, but they also look sort of awful together. So I really want to know your opinion on this one as well. First fabric is this checked chiffon, which I got at Joann's. I actually don't think it is a chiffon. I think it's more of a crepe. I love how bold this print is, but it's also sheer. So if I put an ivory base underneath it, it wouldn't look as crazy. So I'd love to make a blouse out of this with big balloon sleeves. And then I'm thinking the skirt could be made out of this emerald green taffeta. This has so much volume, it could make a really obnoxious skirt. And I think these could look really cool together and sort of Christmassy. So I'm super tempted to get started on this as soon as I finish my Christmas costume. But again, I feel like the color combination is really out there, and I'm not sure if I'm willing to commit to that and potentially have it look terrible. So the next project I have also has shoes because I really went ridiculous with that American Duchess sale. But this project had very low material costs, so hopefully it's all going to balance out. This piece is an Edwardian suit, and I wanted to make an Edwardian suit ever since getting a vintage Harper's Bazaar magazine from my great aunt. I looked through this and just loved the seaming and the detailing on them, and I thought making one would be so much fun. And then I watched Downton Abbey, and Cora Crawley has amazing suits in that show. And then I went to McCall's headquarters and looked through a bunch of books for the 1900s, and I'm just head over heels in love with these suits. So when I was in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and I saw this plaid, I jumped on it. I can't remember the exact name of this material, but I will put it on screen. It is a cotton, but it feels quite a bit thicker than quilting cotton, and I know from experience that this irons beautifully and it's wonderful to work with. I purchased 8 yards of this, and it was around $3 a yard, and I also purchased a yard of a coordinating material, which I'm going to use for the lapels, and then I have a wonderful, very thick cashmere wool in beige in my stash, which I'm going to use to make a matching hat. So that's going to be a lot of fun, but it is going to expose my feet. And as far as Edwardian footwear goes, my only 2 pairs are by Phantasma. Shortly after buying those, I was informed that they are actually a knockoff of a pair of American Duchess shoes, so I didn't feel comfortable buying more of them in a color that would suit this project. And instead, I decided to support American Duchess and purchase their moire pumps, which are the prettiest shoes I've seen in a very long time. Look at them! They're so beautiful! Once again, these were very expensive, but I think they're going to last me a long time and go with a lot of projects. They were something that I had been lusting over since they released, and they were something that I knew I was going to be buying in the new year. So I decided to get them while they were on sale and I could get free stockings to go with them, and I'm really glad that I did. I think they're going to be the perfect addition to this project. Look, they match so nicely, as well as a couple of the other projects that I'm going to show you in a minute. I'm definitely head over heels in love with the early 19th century right now, so I have a lot of plans for that period. I think I'm going to get a lot of wear out of these. So I actually have 2 other Edwardian projects planned, and the first is an Edwardian 18th century mashup. This is actually based on a cover of a magazine from the late 1920s, and it depicts an 18th century woman at a spinning wheel. However, their interpretation of 18th century looks a lot like 1910. This is such an Edwardian style, and I think the combination of some of the 18th century detailing with the very typical early 20th century styling is hilarious. I absolutely love it, and as soon as I saw it, I thought it would be a lot of fun to recreate something similar. I hadn't really wanted to invest the money into making this project, but last week when I went to one of the shops in the garment district, it was closing, and they had all of their silk chiffon marked down to $4.99 a yard, and all of their silk charmeuse marked down to $6 a yard. So I felt like this was the perfect time to get everything I need for it at a relatively low price, and I'm so glad that I did, because now that I'm thinking about constructing this, I'm really excited. I think it's going to be so much fun. So the base fabric that I purchased for this is 4 yards of this green silk charmeuse. This actually reminds me of a polyester charmeuse that I bought a couple years ago, but this is way nicer quality. The way it drapes, it just looks like water. It's beautiful. And I'm really hoping that 4 yards is going to be enough. It's a relatively slim dress, so I think it will be. To go over top of that, I got 4 yards of a green chiffon, and this is silk, so it's very, very thin, and it's also a slightly darker tone, and when these are layered, they create the exact color that I was looking for. And it also has a lot of dimension since there's a slightly lighter, more opaque silk underneath it. So I think that's a really pretty combo. Then for the purple, I purchased 2 yards of this silk crepe. I really like the color of this, but it wasn't quite the texture I was going for. So I ended up purchasing 1.5 yards of silk chiffon from a different store that matches it. So now I'm just on the hunt for a striped charmeuse or chiffon that I can use for the headscarf. I also purchased some more materials there for a 19s piece. And this was really inspired by a project that I wore to the Downton Abbey exhibit, and also just seeing the Downton Abbey exhibit. This was my first time working and tailoring with really thin materials in a long time, and I surprisingly loved the process. So I went into this with the motivation of getting materials that I hadn't worked a lot with before, and getting them for projects that would require an element of tailoring and shaping that I wasn't used to doing. So the Edwardian style 18th century piece is one of those, and I thought this would be a good fun challenge as well. It's loosely based off an advertisement, which I will show here. I really loved the color of this, and I liked the bodice piecing too. Plus the hem has spider webs embroidered on it, which I think is the cutest thing ever. And once I saw this, I knew I wanted to do something inspired by it, even if the design ends up being quite different. So from the shop that was going out of business, I purchased this charcoal gray silk charmeuse. And this is beautiful. I wanted to purchase 5 yards of this, but they only had 2. So I ended up getting 2 yards of black from Zooks Fabrics, and this was $10 a yard, so quite a price difference. And then I also purchased 2 yards of the silvery one, and this is lined, so it has a much thicker texture, and I think it's going to be a lot easier to work with. Looking back, I kind of wish I'd purchased a larger cut of this and ditched the black, but I also think working with the 3 tones of gray will be a fun challenge and make me get a little bit more creative with the design. Even though I planned on this being more of a day ensemble, when I saw this lace, I knew I couldn't leave it behind. This was from another shop that was unfortunately going out of business, or rather moving. A lot of the stores are switching over to 37th Street as opposed to 39th. It's kind of sad, but I am enjoying taking advantage of the sales as they leave. So I got this beautiful black lace, and I will spread it out for you guys because it's stunning. It's a very densely packed floral lace with lots of sequins on it and glass beads and a branch design. This is such a nice dense lace, and it's also quite subtle. It doesn't have any silver beads in it or silver sequins that make it really jump out at you. So I think I can incorporate it into this project really nicely, and it will add a beautiful element of texture and sparkle, but it won't sort of hit you in the face as something really over the top. I also purchased 2 feathers from High Trim. I don't know if these are both going to go with it, but I purchased a white one and then also this beautiful black one. And as always, I am totally mesmerized by how these move and could stare at them all day because I have no life. I wasn't going to mention this, but I accidentally got this material out, so I guess I will. I also want to make a more casual early 1920s piece, and this one isn't going to have any lace involved. It's going to be very simple, just a casual day dress. I purchased this really pretty textured silk charmeuse for it. There's only about 1.5 yards here, so I'm going to have to be pretty tricky with how I cut this out, but hopefully I can make it work because this fabric is gorgeous. And I'm going to pair that with this silky paisley print, which I picked up from Joann's. It's not showing up the right color on camera. It's much darker, more of a maroon in person, and I really like the way it drapes, so I think I'm going to have fun working with that and creating something out of it. The final project I'm going to be talking about is another late 19s piece, and it's based on one of my favorite paintings in the world, and it is by James Shannon. I believe the painting is just called Black and Silver, and it was created sometime between 1915 and the 1920s. I feel like this style of painting is really rare to see during this period. I love how realistic it looks, but it's also kind of abstract. I think the colors incorporated into it are really nice and the overall theme of it. And I hope someday I own a very large print of it that I can hang over top of my pink Victorian sofa. But today is not that day. However, I can make something very similar to what is depicted in that piece. I look at that piece and I see an Edwardian suit or an early 1920s suit, probably made out of velvet to get that level of texture, with the silk blouse underneath it and some blue piping. So I purchased all of those things, as well as some extras because I have a need to make everything sparkly. So for the blouse, I purchased a polka dot charmeuse, and I'd hoped to get 3 or 4 yards of this, but again, they only had 1.5 yards left since they were going out of business. There wasn't much stock there. I also purchased an ivory silk fabric, planning on using this for the sleeves and this for the base. Then for the piping, I picked up 1 yard of blue shanting, and this is 2-tone shanting, so it shifts between gold and this teal tone, and I thought it was really pretty and interesting. It would work nicely with the ivory for the blouse and the brown velvet that I picked up for the suit. The velvet for this was $7 a yard, and it was again from one of the shops that was closing or moving. I realized the suit in the painting is probably silk black velvet that might have a slight gray sheen to it, but black velvet is notoriously difficult to photograph, and the details aren't always visible for that reason. Despite that, I looked at a lot of black velvets with hope that I could find one that would work, but none of them were quite right. And then I saw this beautiful chocolatey brown velvet, and it was $7 a yard, and I decided it was perfect. It also looks really nice with the ivory and the blue, so I'm happy with this choice even though it wasn't what I was originally looking for. And the store that was selling the velvet also had all of the lace. So I may have purchased a little bit of brown lace that I kind of want to put with it. This is stunning. I've seen a lot of pretty laces in my life, and I've seen a lot in colors that I find more exciting than this one, but something about this is just beautiful to me. This is actually a lot more heavily beaded than most of the lace I own, but the beads used are smaller and closer to the fabric's color, so they don't jump out at you. You just see the sparkle from them. It also has these much larger white monties that are incorporated into it, and it's just beautiful. Like, I never have good words to describe lace because the only thing that runs through my mind when I see them is that they are gorgeous. And that's how I feel about this one as well. It also looks really nice with the other fabrics I purchased for this project, so I hope I can find a way to incorporate it somehow. The final piece for this project are some feather flats, which I'm going to use on the hat. These are circles of material that smaller feathers have been glued to. They make working with them a little bit easier, though you also have fewer options because they're glued onto a base. I planned on purchasing feather trim for this. It was going to be around $40 to get half yards of all of the trims I was interested in, so when I saw these for $2 each, I decided to grab them, and this way I have a variety of different feathers I can use and incorporate into the hat. And I only paid $8 for the lot of them as opposed to $8 for the half yard. So I think that is everything I'm going to share in this video. As I said at the beginning, I have purchased other materials and I do have other plans for the coming year, but this is what I want to focus on since these are the ideas that are most fleshed out in my mind that I'm most excited about. So I hope you enjoyed hearing about them and some of my plans for 2018. I'd love to know what your immediate sewing plans for 2018 are, and what you think of some of the color combos that I mentioned in this video, as well as which one of these projects you'd be most excited to see, because I will definitely keep all of that in mind. Now I'm going to get back to work on my Christmas costume because it isn't quite done yet, and as soon as I have that finished, I can get started on something new, and I can't wait because as you can see, I have lots of lovely materials to choose from. Thank you again for watching. I really hope you enjoyed, and I will talk to all of you very soon, and probably more often in the new year if my plans go according to plan.